Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going over every class and its Ascendancy in Path of Exile 2 with a peek at the passive and Ascendant trees to help you choose what you'll be playing. And the reason that it's important to choose what your Ascension is going to be early is that the devs confirm that you won't be able to change it, so as soon as you lock that in, your character is what it is. And if you pick the wrong one by accident, you have to reroll to change it. For example, if you wanted to play Chronomancer, which is the Time Sorcerer, and selected Stormweaver, you would not be able to change that later without making a new character. And from what we've learned so far, you should be able to ascend somewhere in Act 2, and you'll be able to ascend a total of 4 times, getting 2 points each time, and you should be able to respect the talent nodes in your ascension, but we don't know the cost yet, so that's still up in the air, and I'll do a pinned comment with that info when I get it. Also, the normal skill tree is completely different from the ascended one, so the tree that you start with, you can choose your nodes and not worry about it because this can be respec'd at any time just for gold. So the rest of this is going to be my thoughts and opinions about every class and my first impressions, but one thing to say is that everything just looks insanely fun. So if you have a cool idea, I think you should just go for it and not worry about any kind of meta whatsoever, because there's going to be just so many different things that you can do. If you have that fun, cool, and interesting idea, just go for it and don't let anyone tell you not to do it. I also have the talent tree, ascendancies, and uniques all linked down below for you already, so you can go through them all if you want to dive a little bit deeper. And this stuff will be slightly different on the live build of the game, but should be close enough. So lighting this off, we'll start with Warrior. This has been theorized to be the safest possible pick for going big dick late game, because after you've gotten into your build, you'll be able to dual wield massive two-handed weapons to crush everything. This will definitely give you that destroyer-like fantasy from Lost Ark, and some of the skills just look like my peak fantasy. This is like my kind of character. Hammer of the Gods has to be like one of the flat out coolest looking skills that I've ever seen. I think this is going to be one of the most thematic things to make a build around. Now, whether Hammer of the Gods is going to be good or not, I don't think it really matters, because if I end up playing my warrior, my whole build is going to revolve around it. Now, when we look at that Titan Ascendancy, this is going to give you tons of stats everywhere and turn you into the big bonky boy that you dreamed of with tons of extra armor and life. Then you can choose between having like insane stuns to guarantee massive damage, or RNG for more damage and more AoE on your slam skills. I think that being taxed by an inventory chest by the small passive increase kind of sucks, but in general, I think Titan Warrior is going to give you that perfect destroyer power fantasy. And Warbringer is the second ascendancy that you get, where you'll either focus on being a wall or have totems. And this is the one that got memed on in the showcase for the Jade armor, but we found out that you could toggle it on and off. You don't have to like stay in it the entire time, and it will have a cooldown, so it will probably be okay for hardcore. And totems have always been super hit or miss for people, but you can just think of it as like a bonus pet that casts for you in a certain way. And also you have the monkey, and it did just run off in this showcase. So I don't know if it's going to be working properly on live, but I think it'll be really fun to play around with. But the key thing here is going to be the ignore Warcry cooldowns. This could be just ridiculous depending on how they let us set us up, and I could just only imagine what kind of broken silly interactions we could do just spamming like a crazy amount of war cries. So I think either way you take your warrior, you'll get exactly what you signed up for, and this is the character that I think I'm the most excited about. But the other character that has me just as heated is Sork, because the combos they showed were already pretty cracked just in the showcase, and this is probably going to have the craziest amount of damage output like just available in the game. Being able to move and cast at the same time is going to just feel really good with the wisdom movement, and with the skills proccing off of each other or whatever, like the different kind of gems, there is going to just be like a ridiculous amount of cool tech. The showcase was Ignite casting Firestorm, but with the ridiculous amount of skills in the game, you can basically come up with any combination you could imagine to cascade and snowball your damage out of control. Like, I just imagined when I saw that, I was like, I wonder if I could proc Hammer of the Gods. We'll have to see. And when we dive into the Stormweaver Ascendancy, this is going to make it even crazier for Lightning and Ice, letting you really spec deeper into them. I personally really do want to do an ice build, and that might be the first late game thing that I do, but you could just honestly go with the default, which I think is like what most people are planning, is like a crazy ignite build with tons of shock and chill. So like that's probably going to cook. And I'm not sure about Elemental Storm yet. I haven't seen its full stat line and what it can do and like the different interactions it has in game yet, so I think it will have pretty good synergy, but we'll have to see how it works when we get in there. The one thing that I was worried about out of everything that I watched from like all the different leaks and everything was that mana was looking pretty tough. So I think that Arcane Surge is going to be super interesting. And if we do have any kind of mana issues, we could just counter them with that. And that's why I think this is easily, again, one of the safest and one of the highest damage specs that you can go in the entire game, because it basically has an option for everything with tons of cool skills to make any build you can dream of work. And the Chronomancer, which is the Time Wizard, is going to be a 3-sided coin flip. This is either going to be amazing, no questions asked, or just flat out terrible. And that third option is going to be the side of the coin, where you're going to rely on extreme gimmicks and broken interactions to make it work. I personally hope it's the third option, because that's my thing. That's what I'm all about, is like extreme gimmicks and interactions like that. If you've watched anything I've done in the past few years for builds, like that's really what I'm all about. And if I can find a fun, cool, and interesting gimmick, I always go balls deep on it. And this is probably going to be my second character, because I'll have that full set of gear from my Stormweaver for it already. And if you're planning on rolling it, if you follow the same path as me, that's probably the safe route. Or you can all in what sounds like the most gimmicky and probably fun Ascendancy, because time snapping just sounds cool. But if you're not interested in being that normal like elemental sorcerer, you can go Witch, which also just looks insanely cool. Like everything in the game just looked fabulous. And this looks like the perfect pet power fantasy. I'm a huge fan of minions in games, and this is going to be the class for you if you wanted to have that massive army rolling through maps with. It's going to have tons of permanent warriors and mages that just auto summon themselves, so it's an amazing quality of life. But it doesn't stop there, because you can also summon bosses that you kill that retain some of their abilities. Like all the different elites, just thinking about what you can do with that is crazy. And to the extent that you can do it, we don't really know yet. But being able to take control of a boss after you've killed it sounds like one of the coolest minion power fantasies that I've ever heard of in a game. Each minion also costs spirit to summon, so keep that in mind. So like the larger spirit pool you have, the larger your army is. And if you want to have that god tier army of darkness, you're going to want to ascend into an Infernalist. Being able to get so much extra spirit is going to be a huge spike in how many minions you can have, and you'll also be able to get a fire doggo that eats damage for you, so you kind of get a ton of everything that you need. And you'll also be able to turn into a demon. I think this demon form is probably going to be fairly gimmicky and require a lot more of your attention to play than the Mindless Horde build, because you'll be rotting out as you slam out massive skills. But the transformation, honestly, again, it looks amazing, and I think there's going to be some massive damage tech for demon form late game once you have enough life regen to support it. Now, Bloodmage, on the other hand, is going to just be our massive crit damage, super tanky screen obliterator. This is easily one of the flat out strongest Ascendancy, and probably one of the coolest. Talent point wise, it's just ridiculous, because even though you have to spend life to cast spells, you're going to have so much HP that it's just not going to matter, and you're going to get so much of it back that unless you overreach to the point that you're like basically getting one-shotted, I don't think you'll have any problems scaling early, mid to late game. Crit is always a ridiculously strong stat in pretty much every game, and having such a heavy focus on that is just going to make this even better. Scaling your health into more ridiculous multiplicative damage is just going to feel amazing across the board, and there's just no doubt in my mind about that. And I'm assuming we're going to see some of our biggest damage builds from Bloodmage. Now, moving on to Ranger, this is the class that looks like the risk-breaking adventure to me, with like tons of high APM spam, and I'm probably too boomer to really enjoy it, but it looked so cool. Like, they captured the perfect buff in fantasy here, with both Ascendancies having extremely solid movement, meaning the better you are at playing it, the less damage you'll take, because you'll just be able to dodge everything so easily. You'll also have extremely safe screen clear from basically across the map, letting you have that like W key Bowman adventure pretty much on demand as you want it to be. And the Deadeye Ascendancy just really doubles down on that, pumping out tons of range damage with shots basically popping off everywhere. This is definitely going to be one of the highest damage classes in the entire game. And when I was sitting there thinking about how to build this out, I couldn't like stop thinking about cool ways to take this Ascendancy. You get crazy options with tons of attack speed and damage reductions, bonus projectiles and marks, letting you just scale super hard into the late game your way. So if you're planning on a massive damage ranger, I think no matter what build you lock in, this will be a super safe pickup, and it can easily clear anything. Now, Pathfinder, on the other hand, is one I didn't really know how to feel about until I sat there and really looked at everything. From what it looks like, you'll be able to turn your Mana Flask into an active skill that you can either like get exposure on enemies, which lowers their elemental resistance, so that you can do like a very stylized build. But this is something you'll have to do a lot of testing with to see how good or bad it's going to be, because it's just like theoretical. I also think that if you go to the poison contagion route, you'll definitely end up with some insanely broken interactions. The poison just rotting the entire screen out late game sounds really cool, and in the trailer they also showed like some weird like binding plant thing, so the poison's definitely going to have some extra gimmicks to it that will probably end up being really cool. Now, even though I thought the bow looked really cool, the Mercenary's crossbow just trumped it in every single way to me. because it isn't just a crossbow. It's a sniper, grenade launcher, machine gun, shotgun, tactical nuke, mega cannon. Anything you think that this catapult could shoot can and absolutely will, letting you have sustained burst damage on demand whenever you need it. And I think out of all the characters, the art for Merc Witchhunter looked the best, and it's all about killing everything even better. A lot of this stuff is just flat out more damage or making enemies explode, diving deeper into that class fantasy against undead and demons, but more so against magic. I think Sorkward is going to have some really interesting interactions if used right, but we'll have to wait and see how it plays out. And the implications of having 20 more weapon set skill points is something that could be like completely ridiculous. So what that does is it lets you have two sets of talent points that you can invest. So if you have one weapon that's fire based, you can just invest into that. And then you could, like, let's say, have those 20 points free for another weapon to invest in a lightning. So you could really have two stylized weapons and really make your build feel unique and powerful, like to the exact fantasy that you want it. And I think that's something that's like super attractive about this. So just being able to dive so deep is something that like I was really interested in, but let me know how you guys feel about the weapon skills after we play them for a little bit, because I think that they're going to be like really interesting after we get like really in depth with them. Now, Gemling just seems like a raw stat demon that juices all of your base skills, and just thinking about having your raw stat nodes all doubled while being able to commit like everything to just deck sounds like on paper that it's going to be able to bust through any wall like the Kool-Aid Man. I have a couple friends that are going this first, and I just can't wait to see what basically anybody who plays is going to come up with, because I think you're going to be just popping out like crazy amounts of damage. Now, finally, we have the Monk, and this is probably the most old school fantasy that they put in. I think that most people will probably end up going that like Flicker Strike Seizure build, but if you want to see the screen, the animations are super fluid and it looks really clean just to play it normally. Flowing between combos to empower your next skill sounds a lot more fun to me, and honestly, I love the bell. Every time there's a bell in the game, I always end up like so attracted to it. I'm like, I just want to hit the bell. I want to ring it. And because you can take any skill basically on any character, I am probably going to do like a bell sork at some point, but anyways, when I get around to my Monk, my entire kit will be focused on it. I also think that the Invoker Ascendancy is going to be insanely popular, because being able to transform into the last Airbender is something that's been on people's checklist for a really long time. And finally getting to get it here and being able to go deep on whatever element you want gives that like perfect fantasy. There's a lot of interesting options to either be like a mega tank or have tons of elemental skills popping off everywhere. And I think that one of the coolest nodes in the game with like the most potential has to be Scatter to the Winds. Depending like what you can do with it, all the weapons, all the different things you're going to be able to do late game, I think that this is probably going to scale like pretty much out of control, because it would just make any crit build have so much more flavor to it. Now, last and probably least is Acolyte of Cthulhu. You probably won't run into chaos damage until late game again, but once you do, you'll basically hard counter it. And I think this is going to, again, just be a super late game character and has the highest chance of being terrible or god tier. I like the idea of what it's trying to do, and being a corrupted bug smashing the bell sounds like a Sekiro boss. So getting to play that sounds really interesting. I'm just not sure if it's going to be more fun than the Avatar. So we'll see how that works out, but it pretty much covers every leaked thing that I've managed to find so far, and all my thoughts and opinions based on first impressions of all the characters. There is also this Datamined passive tree that I have a few tips for, and this is also, again, linked down below, so you can start early building your points out just before the game launches, so that way you can like have an idea of where you're going. And you should try and pick a particular weapon and spell, then search for something related to them at the top right. Whether it's like fire damage, mace, or whatever keyword it might be, just find the biggest concentration of those nodes closest to your starting point, and then take the route that uses the least amount of points to get a solid early power spike. And try to go through nodes that give you attribute points. That +5 is going to be a lot more valuable than some random node that you don't use or is just worthless to your character. And just reading them and taking your time with that is going to go a long way in making your character have a really smooth like curve of progression from early to late game. I pretty much have my early game set up, so if you plan on playing Sork, I'll be locking that in on stream later on. And I was really torn between Sork and Titan Warrior, so I'll probably end up doing both sooner than later. And I'd like to know if you guys had the same issue deciding on what to play and what you ended up on. Also, if you noticed any mistakes in what I've said or shown, please just let me know so I can do a pinned comment that I can update. That way we all have the best information. This is something that I've done since New World and Lost Ark, where we really started, and something I've kept up on because I'm okay with being wrong. It's really not that big of a deal. I would much rather that my community and everybody around me has, again, the best possible information so that we can all have the most fun playing the game together. I've already seen a lot of people from every stage of every game that I've played coming back around, so it's so amazing to see you again. And if you're newer here, the game I started making content for, the very first game ever, was Lost Ark, and PoE2 gives me that same feeling. The first time I saw that first trailer for Lost Ark. Gave me the first time I saw the PoE2 trailer, exact same feeling. So I am super excited to try this out. And just so people are aware, I do still plan on covering other games, and I plan on slamming Helldivers 2 again when it gets fixed, but the game is so broken right now that I can't play it without crashing because they nuked kill farming with a bad hotfix. So until the next big drop, I'm just going to be blasting PoE2 and having a blast. So that's going to be all for now. I wish you guys the best of luck out there.